Hi, everyone. Welcome. Very nice to be able to today. My name is Leila Furibach. I'm an assistant professor of global public history at the university's Department of History and a visiting faculty at the Elahé Omidyar Institute for Iranian Studies here at the University of Toronto. I want to welcome you all to Tehrangeles down image and archive. This is kind of a double book celebration for books that came out a little while ago, but for various reasons, we're only able to celebrate them today. These are two sort of recent publications, as I was saying, by Professor Farzaneh Hemmasi and Novemeber, two women whose work has inspired me for many years. It's a privilege to be able to participate in the celebration of their work today and to share that celebration with you. The event will be followed by light refreshments and also feature a video installation collage by LA-based artist DJ Omidyar. And we'll do that in that section of the room after the kind of talk and presentation that's going to happen. Other housekeeping things. This event is co-sponsored by the Elahé Mir-Djalali Institute for Iranian Studies, the Jackman Humanities Institute, the Faculty of Music at University of Toronto, as well as the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies at York University. I'd like to thank all of our generous donors for helping us put this together and kind of pull it all together for this evening. It's kind of done very not last minute, but we didn't spend as much time as we usually do for together. A special note of gratitude to Professor Tabakoli, who is unable to join us because he got COVID along with many others at a conference last week. But we want to thank him anyway for his generous support and more broadly for maintaining an exciting and generative environment for Iranian studies here in Toronto and at the University of Toronto. I also want to thank Jackman and her team, all of whom helped support the event with all the technical details. As always, much of what happens in the name of Iranian Studies University wouldn't be possible without her and other folks from the Institute. So thank you all for all your hard work. And just to begin with, we're gathered today at the University of Toronto, so I'd like to do take a moment to do the land acknowledgement and to express our collective gratitude to the Indigenous communities whose land we are meeting on. This place has for thousands of years been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississauga of Credit River. Today, of course, it's still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to them for hosting us. I also want to take a minute to acknowledge that we're meeting today during an incredibly difficult time and in the context of an over a month-long assault on the people of Gaza. For many of us, it has been a real struggle to go about business as usual as we experience collective grief over the many lives lost and the ones who are continuing to struggle in that context. I know many of us feel a deep sense of helplessness, empowerment, and depression during the current state of affairs, but I also continue to be hopeful that we can transform our anger and grief to foster a sense of accountability, solidarity, and action that will lead to long-term meaningful change. In the spirit of Emma Goldman's famous refrain, "If I can't dance, it's not my revolution," I hope that today's gathering offers us both a moment of reprieve and thoughtful celebration about the possibility of joy, creativity, and resistance in diasporic life at a time when it can feel, as I said, very disempowering to be so far away. So with all that, I will introduce our speakers and pass the mic to them. So, I should also say the books are not available for sale in physical format here, but these papers that you will see floating around have barcodes where you can purchase them online. So I encourage you to do that and then find another occasion to harass our guest speakers for autographs. And the two books, we do have copies of them and they'll be in the back available for your viewing. Okay, with that, so I'll start with Professor Hemmasi. So Dr. Farzaneh Hemmasi holds a PhD from Columbia University and is an Associate Professor of Ethnomusicology at University of Toronto. Her monograph, Tehrangeles, Screaming, Intimacy and Imagination in Southern California's Iranian Pop Music, came out by Duke University Press in 2020 and is an ethnographic account of Los Angeles-based pre-revolutionary Iranian expatriate cultural industry. The book was awarded the inaugural Farzaneh Hemmasi Book Award from the Association for Iranian Studies last year. She, of course, has many other publications, which I won't bother listing today, and her more recent work is a collaborative ethnographic research project on music, sound, and affordability in Toronto's Kensington Market neighborhood. This fall, she's also a faculty fellow at the Jackman Humanities Institute. And secondly, Hannah Darabi is an Iranian artist and photographer. Darabi studied at the Faculty of Fine Art in Tehran and at the Paris State University in Saint-Denis. She's currently based in Paris, but her country of origin remains the main subject of most of her photographic series. In order to reveal the complex political situation of Iran, she creates theories in which her photographs interact with other materials such as text, archival images, and objects. Artist books occupy a particularly privileged place in her practice. This books, a little plug. And her work in this medium includes the amazing book Enqilab Street, A Revolution Through Books, Iran 1979 to 1983, published in 2019 by Spectre Books and Lobel. She's also the recipient of numerous awards, including most recently the Madame Figaro Prize for Soleil of Persian Square. This is the current artist book that we're talking about and celebrating today. Focused on the Iranian diaspora of Southern California and is popular in music. So with that, I'll pass it out to our speakers.
Well, I'm so happy to be here with Hannah, and thank you all for coming. We're going to structure this as less like a formal book talk and more something where we go through some of the materials that we are both really excited about that come from our respective books, which are somewhat in conversation with each other. So the books themselves are in conversation and we're in conversation, and we hope that at the end you'll join us in conversation as well to talk about some of these materials as well. So I think for many of us, Tehrangeles is intimately familiar, but in case it's something that you don't know about already, let's see. Maybe you'll change, maybe you won't. There we go. Okay. Yes. Okay. We're just going to make that addition and addition problem very clear and say we're talking about Tehran plus Los Angeles equaling Tehrangeles, right? So we're in Tehranto here, but this is Tehrangeles over on the Southern California. So really briefly, the history of Tehrangeles has to do with, well, this is what I've heard from in my research, which is that it has to do with very, very affordable education in higher education in California through the UC system. And during the 1970s, late 1960s and 1970s, many Iranians were studying, getting advanced degrees and college degrees in the United States. California presented a very attractive option for them with a cheap state school system, a very high quality state school system. But it had some other advantages and reasons that it resonated with Iranians as well, such as?
Well, I mean, for me, it's mostly when I was growing up in Iran, I would hear that Los Angeles is exactly like Tehran. Like when we were talking, I mean, in popular sense, not among the artist circle or intellectuals. When you would say that I would go to the United States, everybody will assume that it would be Los Angeles. So when I went there, I was really looking hard for this resemblance to Tehran. And I remember one of the things that really really marked me, it was the highways. And then I also came upon this research who was also talking about how the master plan of Tehran in 1960s was largely inspired by Los Angeles, like many other cities. There's like cities in Switzerland also. I guess at that time, Los Angeles was like kind of a model for the modern city. And I think, I mean, we discussed this because I asked you also, why do you think all these people went there? And you answered, what?
Like and what you just heard, yeah.
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 And I thought also because there's something familiar, and this familiarity is Tehran never succeeded to be Los Angeles, but there are like things here and there that reminds us really of Los Angeles.
yeah, smog, mountains in the distance. And
Yeah.
of course, at this point, lots and lots of Iranians. So that's a kind of, harmonious thing.
Sure.
So we have this, Tehrangeles is a place, a collection of places, a geographical region. You can say that it's located pretty much in Southern California, but mostly Los Angeles and Orange counties. So not strictly only Los Angeles. But it's also like a way of, it's also a set of cultural formations. And that's one of the things that interests us both. I think probably before we get too much into the actual meat of what we're talking about, maybe we should tell you just a little bit about the books and the projects and how we got into them. So my book is an ethnography. It means that I went to Southern California and spent a lot of time interviewing and hanging out with people in the Iranian music industry, talking to them, interviewing them when I was able to get an appointment with some of these very important celebrities. Otherwise consuming lots and lots of Iranian media, discussing it with people and trying to understand what made this music industry that I had first been exposed to as a child through growing up in the United States, listening to music at parties and so on. What made this music tick? One of the biggest questions for me was, why is this music that is so socially valuable on the dance floor, valuable for getting the party going, and absolutely vital to creating the atmosphere that's necessary for celebratory occasions? Why is it also simultaneously so dismissed by the intellectuals that that I knew and grew up with? As my father's a professor and some of his friends are professors and that sort of thing. So why was it, how could it hold that double meaning? And of course, this is the situation for lots of different kinds of popular music that isn't around the world. We can think of many comparative examples, but the fact that this type of double attitude around Iranian popular music also aligned with the revolutionary dismissal of popular music as something that was immoral and inappropriate for post-revolutionary Islamic Iran made this a really interesting subject for me to think about. So that's where my mind came from. I think one other thing is that growing up in the United States and not speaking Persian pretty much as a second language, my first entree into Iranian culture was on the dance floor. And that wasn't the best entree, depending on who you're asking for, but it was the entree for me. And so that also got me really interested in thinking about what else can I learn about the culture of this very particular musical world.
So for me, it started really like in 2000. I did a project about city of Tehran, and that's my city. That's where I grew up. And I would also have in mind that this neighborhood, the Iranian neighborhood in Los Angeles called Tehrangeles, and we received the images of Tehrangeles through pop music and also pop culture. And that was also one of the reasons that I didn't want to go there, because when I was growing up, as a teenager, it wasn't one of my favorite musics to listen to, and because of this, we had this very like strict intellectual circle who would say that's low culture, and that's not something you would, even though you would some of those people would listen to it, but they never would accept. But I remember also one of the places that the Iranian pop music is circulates a lot in the city of Tehran, and I like really this in between places is in taxis. Taxis are not public, they are not private neither, but those are places that you would because they wanted to keep going, and their job is, to be honest, very boring, so they need some stimulation, and the pop music, especially dancing pop music, is one of the things that they listen. And I think at some point I made my peace with this music through these travels with taxi, and also dancing in the taxi became something that you would do, because once again, it's not public space when you can dance, it's not private space neither, so it's kind of like something you do. And then in 2017, I started really photographing this neighborhood, Tehrangeles. And I also remember I went there many years ago, like in 2005, because I have a brother who is among this generation of Iranian who went to UCLA to study like these, what do we say, escape of brains?
Oh yeah, brain drain.
Yeah. So, and he brought me to this neighborhood, and he also said, you would see, it's exactly like Tehran. And I went there, and it was not. And so I started, because I knew also about other projects, and they those other artistic projects, which are also very interesting, they kind of insist on this resemblance. And I thought, and what if I start to photograph it in a way that would see these Iranian diaspora in a global space, would see like the American architecture, especially Californian architecture, which is a mixture of anything, and it's a poor architecture, as like one artist would say, it's a poor landscape, and this presence of Iranian diaspora. And then, of course, we should talk about Iranian pop music, because those people, I mean, it was my image of Los Angeles, but also it's one specific, if we can say it's Iranian, it would be in that sense, because they are one specific element of. So I also started to gather archives, like cassettes, but also other poor, we can say, also objects like yellow pages, also through the video clips, and all this all together became this this project. And now I really love Iranian pop music without any shame.
To know it is to love it. So I suggest that you no. So, so just get some basic things on the table. What we're talking about, since we have sort of talked around it, is the mass exodus of Iranian popular musicians from pre-revolutionary Iran, where there was a highly developed, in part interwoven with the state media, popular music industry, right? Popular music in film, popular music on television, popular music on the radios, very active production of albums, a very well-funded popular music industry with a broad distribution through live music venues as well. So a series of cabarets and cafes and live, proscenium stages, fancy stuff in the big cities and in the resorts. In the revolution, that changes quite dramatically. I'm actually going to skip ahead to a different slide, and we can go back to the revolutionary critique of popular music. So when the Iranian Revolution occurred and the Islamic Republic of Iran came into being around that time, so from 1978, 77, and so on, organs of popular culture started to come under attack because they were seen as impious and immoral, as symbols of West toxification, really vectors for bringing a kind of corrupting influence that was both culturally corrupting and morally corrupting. It was also, popular culture was considered to be trite or banal. The key term here is mubtazal, which you hear still applied sometimes. And a major problem for some particular artists and some particular mediums was that it was supported by the deposed Pahlavi regime. So the writing in Persian that you see here is a summons to the revolutionary courts, right, 1978 or so. It was published in Etela'at, one of the biggest newspapers, and it's summoning it's 10 mostly women, female performers with some men as well, who were popular on stage and screen. So many performers were both film stars and had music careers. And so this is calling them to account for their behavior to the revolutionary courts. So some people did show up for this, and other people just left, right? And decided that it was time to go. So they packed up their things and moved to Los Angeles or other places, or sometimes it took them a while to leave the country. Maybe they stayed in the country 5 or 6 years, but towards the end, by let's say the mid-1980s, most of the pre-revolutionary music industry major players had left the country. So that means not just singers, but songwriters, arrangers, lyricists. So a wholesale departure. This stands in great contrast to what happened with television and film, right? So those people, if they were ideologically flexible, sometimes could find a way to work within that system. But for popular musicians, it was much harder to do. So people left and they formed a popular music and media industry in exile, which is in Southern California. In order to understand the contrast between how this popular music changed from pre-revolutionary Iran to post-revolutionary Iran, it's important, I think, to listen to a little bit. So we're going to go, yes, finally, stop talking.
Boring.
Stop talking. So we're going to listen to this piece by Ebi, who was a pre-revolutionary popular musician and then moved to Los Angeles. So we're going to see one video by him in in Iran, and then we'll watch another one by him here in California. Okay, but even before we get going, can you see this beautifully painted stage set? Yeah, it's nice, right? He looks like he's in a forest. He's in a forest someplace. Part of what we want to, the lighting is very nice. Yeah. Part of what we want you to attend to is as you're watching, or what we're kind of one of the points that we want to make, and Hannah picked this video today as this perfect example, is how of the investment of resources that would go into this kind of production. So this is a very nicely painted set. You'll see that it's a stage. So let's listen.
وقتی رسید آهو هنوز نفس داشت هنوزم بره هاشو میلیسید وقتی رسید قلبی هنوز تپش داشت اما اونم چشمه ای بود که خوشید وقتی رسید آهو هنوز نفس داشت هنوزم بره هاشو میلیسید دلتنگ از این بیدار دلتنگ از این سیار
There's a full orchestra. There's an entire string section, right? There's like, very well arranged, very proficient players. This is not the kind of resource that musicians would have in Los Angeles, where they were starting over. It was also a different era of music production. Any comments on this? On lyrics, maybe?
No, but as you said for the set, because I kind of, for me, I try to analyze this the video clips from the visual point of view. And actually, when I was finalizing this book in 2020, your book came out. And I couldn't do my research to go and interview people, and just I was reading your book and I was like, okay, this is really good. I mean, she did everything, and you mentioned also like some video clips. So I at this point I really try to be more careful about the clips, and this was something that you really was different from the ones that are produced before the revolution, the ones who are produced after. This sets and the decor, which is really, I mean, there's this notion of decor, and also then we come to the video clip. Really, this is not a video clip, but it's just a recording of a.
It is kind of a video clip,
but it's very theatrical.
Right.
It's not no cinematographic effect or whatever.
So I think it's probably helpful for us to just go straight to the other example to contrast. So this is Ebi in Southern California.
پشت دیوار شب یه راهی داره که میره یه راست بر خونه یه ستاره 4 قدم از ور دل ما که رد شی میبینی ماه شب 14 داره خورشید خانم و ابرو شدن بیداره خورشید خانم و ابرو شدن بیداره.
So this is something, and I'm going to guess that many of you, because this is Tehranto, didn't grow up in Canada. Maybe you did, but maybe you didn't, right? So I think that's another important point to say that we've mentioned, but we haven't said explicitly, which is that this music was actually not technically permitted within Iran, but it was very commonly circulated. So when one of my interests in this also was when I went back to Iran to visit after, I'd left when I was a little kid and then went back after university, was that my cousins in Iran knew this music better than I did. And they had grown up with it more than I had, even though it was on my side of the world. And so that kind of familiarity that we can count on, I think, through great distance and through physical separation, because these musicians, for the most part, who ended up in Los Angeles, haven't gone back to Iran. They've maybe gone to the edge of Iran to go and do concerts in Dubai or in Georgia or someplace else, but they aren't there. So this is a very, the knowledge, the shared experience through this music that people have is mediated through mass media, right? And through some version of sometimes sort of almost underground kind of media or informal media and network circulation. So that's another issue that we'll talk about.
For me, just to compare these two clips visually, is also well, when I was growing up, we will receive these clips by VHS, but very poor images. Some of them were black and white, and I just realized now that they are in color. But now when I'm looking at them, for example, in these two, I see lots of like these sets, these decors of nature, for example, as you saw in the Abby song before, which is kind of also, maybe it was something that was especially circulating everywhere, but also in between like artists at the time in Iran, that they kind of longed and craved for this simple life of in nature. And so we see this person with this very beautiful light of evening in a forest. And this one is for me most urban, and also most like with these colors of disco. So I have a feeling that there's also this shift when they came to Los Angeles. They were kind of in touch with this urban space which was there, even though we can't see any element of Los Angeles in particular. But I think that's maybe something that I notice now.
Yeah. There's all kinds of I think we should keep going to make sure that we get to. Do you want to do the Tanin one, or do you want to do or do you want to do this
I
one?
really like this one.
Okay, we'll play it. So one of the main
Mm-hmm.
things that the Iranian music companies in Los Angeles did every year was create a Nowruz show. And Nowruz is the biggest holiday of the Iranian year, and it's a pre-Islamic holiday that's a celebration of our new year that's based on the spring equinox. And so it's a time of getting together and parties and so on. So they would create, these companies in Los Angeles would create variety shows that would play. And this is a really fascinating clip. Yeah, and it shows, I think you'll see a party. Well, maybe I'll play it and then we can talk about it. But basically it's a party that brings a Nowruz party that brings many celebrities together. you want to say about that?
No, I mean, that kind of, for me, this is an important thing because I think also we both talked about, in a way, about way of life, about how you can live in Los Angeles, like Orange County, like, for example, my parents does. You are in the house, it's Iran, and you look at the window, and it's America, and it's exactly the same thing. It's typical in American interior in terms of architecture, but then the way that they are this in Iranian gatherings, you put all these chairs around, and there's like the scene in between which is empty, because that's where people should dance. So people would sit around, like eat, drink, and then people would dance. So this is exactly the same interior. So that's the way of life. I mean, you can't, there is a desire for Iranians to say that the urban space is also Tehran. It's not, but they kind of translate the interior to Tehran. So that's Tehran, or Iran in general.
The confusion between locations, I think, is also something very, very interesting, right? So you have Tehran and Los Angeles and Los Angeles and Tehran. And that's basically what we're talking about, is that crossover between the two. I think it's important to point out that there is a lot going on with gender and sexuality in these types of scenes as well. So and also with ideas of propriety, what it means to have sort of be a respectable person. So this cartoon says Aberu Rizi, which means like disrespectful behavior, and it's saying men and women above the age of 40 dancing, right? That's what it is. But everybody likes to dance, like everybody's. So this is a kind of this is a critical cartoon about Los Angeles Iranian culture, actually written by somebody in San Francisco. So if you're familiar with San Francisco, Los Angeles rivalries, it apparently extends to Iranians as well. But I put this slide in here because this is the emphasis on dance and happy socializing is also one of the elements that can be kind of troublesome about this particular music. As I said earlier, it's so important. The kind of socializing that we saw just in that clip, very staged clip, is really representative of a lot of the happy socializing that people do anyway. But it also can be a kind of a gray area in terms of the sort of respectability. So how respectable a person can really be if their money is made by providing dance music, and if they are somebody who really likes to dance all the time. So to be Los Angelesi, which is the sort of dismissive, it's a term that everybody used, but I don't use it in my book very much because it has that a little bit of the sense of dismissal around it, that nobody in Los Angeles who works in Tehrangeles, which is a nicer term for them, wants to be called Los Angelesi, because it means that it's cheap, and it means that it's sort of low quality, and that it's something that you would throw away, right? So even though the terms sound very similar, to be called Los Angelesi means also that you are not that Irani, right? You are of there, not of here, even if you are actually of there. So this kind of mix of identities, I think, is also something that we explore a lot in our work in different ways. Mm-hmm. So I talked a little bit about women as props, or I have in my book. So women as props in the background of many of these. So the star here is Asif, and Asif has the pleasure of enjoying the company of many women, including, strangely, a woman in a short skirt but hijab also. So like it's kind of a mixed bag in LA, where you can kind of put things together in the way that you want them to be or wish that they were. So women, we have just played songs by Ebi, and you've heard male singers, but I think one really important thing to mention in terms of a distinction between what was happening within Iran and still what's happening within Iran and what happened outside is that really the biggest prohibitions around music have to do with women singing voices in post-revolutionary Iran. Women do sing in Tehrangeles and they do sing in Iran too, but don't have explicit permission to do that, right? So the presence of female singers within Los Angeles and women on stage and women's bodies on stage marks a huge contrast with what happens within the country. And even after popular music was legalized or explicitly permitted in around 1997 or so within Iran, that situation for women and women's bodies and women's appearance and women's voice remains pretty much a red line in terms of publicly available, public circulating things that have the governmental stamp of approval on them. Women don't have I was disappointed that I wasn't able to speak with more women as I was doing my research. Women don't have positions of power within the Tehrangeles music industry. Somebody like Gugush is a real exception, right? Gugush is a huge star and she didn't come until 2000. So she just hasn't been there as long as some of the other people. But somebody like Leila Furuhar, who we will hear in a second, is a real workhorse of Iranian music in Los Angeles and was a child star in Iran, the way Gugush was.
Exactly like
yeah, comes from a musical family like Gugush, a star family, and then also did this all. So I want to play you this just so you can see her at work. Kills me to stop her, but I will.
So cruel.
Yeah. So one other thing to think about is sort of to me, it doesn't sound like an impoverished musical aesthetic. It doesn't. It sounds wonderful. I'm ready to dance, right? This is what I grew up with. I'm ready to go. But if you compare it to the pre-revolutionary full orchestra, you can hear the tinny synthesizer in the background. You can hear the one guy thumping away on his tombak. You can hear, a more reduced, stripped down aesthetic or a range of possibilities. You can also see that so many of the artists turned towards making dance music when they hadn't done that prior to the revolution, because they had to do it when they were in Los Angeles, because they had to make money. And so the way you made money was by playing weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs for Los Angeles's large Jewish community, and for playing at nightclubs, right? So this was an absolute transformation that was
as you said yourself, that their public was basically in Iran, and Iranian people, they went through a revolution and a war, and they were sick of hearing sad music. They needed something to dance.
Yeah. So I think, absolutely. So I think I just am going to say really quickly that I'm going to sort of hand things over to Hannah a little bit more, but just to say that cassette tapes are really important for both of us. And that's the medium where a lot of this a lot of focus is. We had like VHS tapes and cassette tapes, I think. So these are just pictures from the offices of Tehraneh. Tehraneh is a big music company, and so this is an image of from their archives, right? It's just a room full of CDs and cassette tapes and things that they've copied from Iran as well, and now are selling in diaspora. But I want to show you the inside of Hannah's book.
I mean, I'm very much interested in cassettes and VHS because that was how we were listening to music. Yes, I'm that old. And as I said before, we would receive these cassettes and VHS in a very hidden manner. So there weren't original ones. There were copies, and there were copies that been copied many, many times, and they didn't have any covers. What I remember was all these cassettes, I mean, the white cover, and they would handwriting, and then somebody would write again and again and again. So when I discovered this material, the original one, first of all in Tehrangeles, and then many also in via internet, and like I have a feeling that most of this, my archive was coming from Germany, from, I think, young people that has Iranian parents, but they don't like this music, so they would sell it. And so I was really asking myself, how can I treat this material? Because there are many ways. And I also, so the covers became really important. And I figured if I could put this material as an archive beside my photographs in a vitrine, but I figured that nobody, they're kind of modest objects. They're just this big. And especially, I mean, I live in Europe, and the Iranian diaspora is big, but not this big. So most of my audience are Western people, and so they wouldn't really notice this because this is really small. And so that's my strategy to make them visible. But also I have this, I accept that I have this fetishist relationship with these objects. So I want to put them, I want to put that aspect also forward. So I made images of this cassette covers with the objects. So we have still the objects, so they're objects, but in the background, there is, you see this aura on the top of the cassettes, which was made by very industrial with a scan machine. And so I gave them this kind of aura because they were like, now they are objects of value, and there's something to see there. And also the background, the color background is very much inspired by all these colors that we see in Iranian clips. We saw it in AB, for example. But I mean, now it's more personal, and also there is something of me because I also, I think my colors are a bit less flashy than the disco colors because I wanted also to add something else. But I mean, we can also talk about these covers hours and hours, but yeah, what we are seeing there.
So I always thought that Hannah had put these on fabric, but she made the background actually. Doesn't it look like fabric, kind of? Yeah. To me, it does. Yeah, but she made.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Even photographers, they ask me. One of them, even one person, thought that I photographed them with a background and with large format camera, and I was like, no.
Should we show them the next one?
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is a book layout, and I think it's an interesting one. And we agree that it's an interesting one for you to see. So the woman, normally in my book or in my project, I don't really talk about the identity of these people that I photographed in Tehrangeles, because I want to keep a fictional aspect. It's I mean, my style is mostly documentary style, but at the same time, it's not about one person who went to Tehrangeles and who build a life there, but it's about these characters. Well, I can reveal, because here it's another context. So this woman is what do you know her?
Yeah, her last name is Chamanoro.
Yeah,
Rezvan. So,
yeah, I don't remember her first name. So it's the wife of Abbas Chamanoro, who built a music box, this shop in Tehrangeles, and also Beethoven, which is another shop in Iran for. So these were people who, I mean, even though I didn't know music box, as a student in University of Photography, I would go all the time to Beethoven. So this woman, when I saw her first in Tehrangeles, she was walking on the sidewalk, and she just turned, and I was like, I saw Heide's ghost. So, I mean, I was so surprised, and I was like, okay, now I start to hallucinating, and I mean, that's bad. And then I went to the shop and I started to talk to them, and I understood that she's the wife of I'm so sorry that I don't know her first name. And just
Rezvan.
Rezvan.
Yeah.
Okay, Rezvan Chamanara. And then it was very interesting to also understand how, like, people looks, they're so much inspired. I mean, she knows it for sure, and she wants to do. I mean, she plays with it. So it was also in the book to to play with this resemblance that ordinary people that would dress or do their makeup and hair in a way that they would look like pop stars. And so in the book, they are together finally. And some of the people, I mean, Western people who won't know that Haide is dead, they would think that that's Haide.
Yeah, and actually Hayede's grave is just down the street. We visited it.
Yeah.
We were in Los Angeles together, right? We all went, right. So it's a lot of things coming together in that particular image. Some of
cassettes also.
Yeah, and
on
their
the background.
cassettes. Right. And did you buy your cassettes from them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They
so
gave me a really good price. Right. I'm so sad that the shop is gone.
Right. So at this point, it's not just that this music is like trash, literally, right? It's the cassettes are trash because they're a dead medium in a sense, or they're some kind of collector's object. People don't even have the means to play many of them. But this, except of course for young people who are started getting into them. But they also at this point in this store, because I visited not too long probably around the same period, they were literally throwing them all away, right? So you could buy them for like $2 each or something. Maybe you got a better deal than me. This project of displaying them as objects, as something to be treasured, is really to me it's both an intervention in that, saying that this is not a dead medium. This is a medium that lives forever, even though it has perhaps low sound quality. Have you ever tried to play them?
Yeah, I play them all the time.
Yeah. See, now I really treat them as fetishes and I don't play them. So yeah. But also to say that this is, one of the things that people would say about music in Los Angeles is that mundegornist, that it's not something that is it's not going to stick around for long. It's going to fade away. It's just cheap. It's throwaway music just for the party. But this is different, right? We're turning these things into, Hannah's book is turning them into something permanent in a way your book is more permanent than they are. Well, we'll see, I guess, but yeah.
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, so there's also this focus on Tehrangeles itself as a physical location. So there's Iranians all over this area, and there's actually a lot of the music industry is in the valley, so in the San Fernando Valley, not in Westwood, where these pictures are mostly taken. But these are examples of pictures that I did for my own research that show a now defunct Iranian store. A long time ago, 2007, was this picture taken of Reza Pahlavi and family. So monarchists have a very strong presence in Los Angeles. Young people displaying their Persian pride. There were also pre-revolutionary flags on hats and so on. And this is the sign that was put up in Persian Square. But Hannah has a very different perspective on these similar types of spaces.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, for me it was also important because, to be honest, yes, when I go there also my eye is very selective. I would see these objects, I would see like a sign of a shop which would say Tajrish, which is a place in Tehran, and I would feel that I'm in Tehran. I mean, I would do that. I mean, this is the life of an immigrant. We will also back and forth all the time, go to Tehran and come where we are. But I also very much like this poor architecture of Los Angeles. And so I really wanted to have them both together. And well, my photography is very much, as you can see here, is inspired by also American photographers from 60s and 70s, those people who are called new topographic. And also when I'm telling this poor landscape, I'm also referring to one of those people from that generation that used this kind of this description of the Los Angeles architecture and urbanism. So these images are taken in that manner. Well, I mean, it's a bit different because they don't use a square, this format. Mine is a little bit different. But also you can see the presence of Iranian diaspora very discreetly, but you see them everywhere. I mean, each image has something, some Farsi writing, sometimes a little bit more hidden, but most of the time, if you try, you would find it. But at the same time, I think for me, it was also important to see them all together. So that's what's happening in these images.
Yeah. We're getting close to the end, just so you know. So we're going to snack and party soon, but we just have a little bit further to go. So I think one of the things that we're both also attentive to is the difference of temporality and sort of Los Angeles popular culture as a place where people reflect on their heritage. So one of this may be an unlikely and also embrace the new. So here we have an image of Mohammad Khordadian, who is a dancer and at this point in his life, famous as an aerobics instructor. And so he is one of my very favorite people out of Tehrangeles, and probably for a lot of people. Yeah, he's really beloved. He became famous for a while in part because he was arrested and imprisoned in Iran when he went back to visit his family because he was corrupting people via videotape. So his choreographed dances got him in trouble. Some people believe that the real reason that he was arrested was because he is queer. We don't know that for sure, and that was never brought up in the discussions around him or in his court cases. But that is part of his identity, and he came out basically in a more major way after that experience, and when he decided not to go back to Iran anymore. So he's a fascinating, important figure for a lot of reasons. But I also I'm bringing this particular up because of the juxtaposition between Pars video. Pars is showing this top of a column from the ancient pre-Islamic ruins of Persepolis, so a symbol of Iranian heritage, pre-Islamic Iranian heritage, which also ends up on the top of the spine of Khordadian's video. So this sort of high and low mixing of here and there, and the characteristic voiceover with the deep man's voice, Pars video is Oxnard, California, like they would do this kind of sort of presentation of this as if it's majestic, and then Khordadian would come on and teach you dance lessons, right? So it's this kind of that it's working in of multiple scales of time frames of history, the extremely contemporary and the ancient, along with the continuation between them being the pre-revolutionary, right? So the Pahlavi period in which dancing and pre-Islamic are more celebrated. And Hannah has this in a different style.
Just one thing about Khordadian. I guess also he kind of made Iranian popular dance as something that you can teach, and it wasn't just like something that was like low culture and you should like dance it, whatever. But you can teach it. I don't know if I said to you, I told you, I had all these Iranian dance classes with this person, and dancers know about her, Madame Kishipur, and she would like teach us in her basement, and it was like inspired by Khordadian and all the videos that he did. So this is yellow pages that I gathered from also the grocery shops. Iranian grocery shops would distribute them freely. And for this project, I kind of put different pages in conversation to say something, a kind of an interpretation of what's going on, and the use of also all these political icons, like icons coming from, as you said, from ancient Iran, from Persepolis or other things. So this is, for me, this juxtaposition is Iranian history briefly. We have the eagle sign, which is from Persepolis, and this is the Persian, we can say, empire. We have the map of Iran and the thing that says in the memory of homeland. Mm-hmm. And then we have Iman, which is kind of this religious. We can say also that's part of Iran, and then we have Mossadegh, the symbol of national pride that is there with, and then something that is very funny on the top, you see it on the right, my right, your left, which is no and yes, the big words, which for every Iranian knows what does that means. And this is like the advertising for, I think it's for insurance or something. And they use this very political, because no and yes, those are like things that happened during the Iranian referendum. When the Iranian Revolution of 1979 happened, there was this referendum, and they asked people, Republic Islamic, yes or no. So this also typeface here, they especially use that because of this nostalgia of no and yes, which is very, I think, brave, because for some people can be also one thing that you don't want to buy that insurance because it's too much of trauma going on. But yeah, I mean, that's amazing how all these references to the political history of one nation can go through things that are in relation to advertising and pop culture and everyday use.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of our final categories, maybe our final category to talk about, is the placing people, creating Iran in Los Angeles. And so I have the first example that I talk about in my book has to do with Kish. Kish is a small island off the in the Persian Gulf. And it's a resort island, among other things. And this is a video shot in Southern California with Sepideh, who is sort of a sex symbol, one of the more traditionally sexy blonde Iranian female figures of her generation, crawling around in the sand on the beach as if it's Kish, but of course it isn't. It's Southern California, right? So there's this kind of emplacement of her in this fantasy world of Kish, dancing around, enjoying herself and so on, as if she was there while she's actually in LA. And I had a very surreal moment actually in a cab in Kish, hearing that song about Kish while I was sitting in Kish, you know, and thinking like, you know, where am I? Well, which Kish am I in?
دیشب مثل هر شب جزیره اومد به خوابم دیشب مثل هر شب خواب دیدم که روی آبم میونه آسمون رنگین کمون واسه پرواز عشق توف و کهکشون تو قلب آبهای سبز و آبی جنوبی جزیره تو اول خورشید نشون دیشب مثل هر شب جزیره اومد به خوابم دیشب مثل هر شب خواب دیدم که روی آبم
And I have another video that's a clip from another video, which is much more recent. This is from Saucy's Gentleman, if we remember this song. So Saucy is a more new generation Los Angelesi singer who was Los Angelesi before he moved from Iran already. So he was already emulating this kind of style and innovating in this style. But here he's picturing typical post-revolutionary Iranian schoolgirls in Los Angeles, and he's flirting with them the whole time. And so this has people are able to play with these kinds of fantasies of what they would like Iran to be like, or what it could be like by restaging them on a green screen or on LA streets.
واسه همه پیگیریات مرسی واسه همه کادوات مرسی وای بدن رو ببین جون بابا خودتو بلرزون بابا همه میگن ساسی پاشو همه رو برقصون دادا آقامون جنتلمنه این خانومم عشق منه آقامون جنتلمنه این خانومم عشق منه توی فوتبال ما یه حرکت یه فاز مثبتا رو نگی که پیک چند باری دستت دیدم اینجا تهرانه اگه شاخ بشی کار دستت میدن سلطان جون بر قربان من خیلی عاشقتم و توی همه دنیا
here you see like one image of the project that I did before, which I kind of also consider as the first volume of the other one, which is a project about Tehran, and the other one is the Soleil of Persian Square project. So still, I mean, that's also what I do with the photography and the documentary photography all the time, and I think that it's so it's the representation of urban landscape. It's ordinary urban landscape. You don't see anything happening. There is not one element that would be bigger than the other element to capture our eyes. But at the same time, I think this notion that how I was selective when I did the other project in the other photo in Los Angeles, that when I showed the other photo to my mom, for example, she said, "Oh, so that's Tehran." So yeah, I mean, she kind of also, she was selective in her mind, and she saw the shops, and she thought that it's Tehran. But at the same time, I think that's also this. I really like to also play with this ambivalence in photography and documentary photography. How you can kind of also displace people. It can be Tehran, or also it can be Los Angeles.
Yeah. I will do.
Yeah, so ahead. This is, I think we talked about this with the reception of Iranian people. And one is also, this man is in also Tehran, and this time it was funny that he's a resemblance to Habib. I think, you know, we're paying attention to time, and we want to leave a little bit of time for discussion. So we're just going to say thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And just a reminder for people that came in late, the books are not available in physical copy, but you'll see these papers floating around with the barcodes, so you can get copies of both of them. We'll open it up to questions, and maybe I'll just start with one question and let you guys warm up. So I was wondering about you guys' process of how you selected the materials, so the objects, the subjects, the places that you decided to photograph, because you know, you talked about the ephemeral or trashy nature of this stuff, but also both books serve as an archive of this material, right? And guys, that you brought that up. So I'm just wondering both how you made your selections, where you went to collect, and how you decided what should be preserved.
Yeah, you want to go ahead?
Oh, okay. For me, it started from the photographs of the city first, and then little by little, I also started to buy things and collect things, and I think I mean, it's always many things, and it's the moment that I should finalize it as a book or as an exhibition, that you should, when the reducing happens, that's the moment that you keep, or you just decide that something is not it's not for this project, but it can go to the next project. So it was in 2000, because this book was published at the end of 2021. So I did it in 2020 during COVID, and I had time. So yeah, so that was the moment that I also, in regard, I was reading your book, and also that helped me greatly to do this selection and to do this editing. Many of the, I mean, there's also this part about video stills, especially that part is made out of what you discuss in your book.
Yeah, we're sorry that we forgot to actually to put in this one last section of her book, which is these big stills. But yeah, you can see them here printed. Yeah, absolutely. I think in my case, ethnographic research tends to be based greatly on luck of who will speak to you. So that sometimes makes part of your decision for you. And who you get lucky enough, who's ready to open up their house and their mouth, you know. So I was very lucky to speak with Manucher Bibian. Bibian is the founder of Jame Jam, which was the first cable television station in Southern California, but also he ran Apollon, and which was the record producer, one of the major record producers prior to the revolution. So he says, and his family says, that he produced over 6,000 singles, 6,000 single songs, and he was a great great person in terms of what he achieved for Iranian popular music. So, you know, certain key individuals help shape a project. Beyond that, I felt like I needed to talk about Shishohasht, which is the rhythm that we keep hearing, dombili, dombo, dombili, dombo, yeah, this, and also needed to talk about Daryush, because I was the one really famous person I got to talk to. So that was really, that was really great. And also needed to talk about him because I have had such a strong dislike for his music at the same time that many other people really liked him. So I wanted to understand that and understand that more. So, you know, all of these things sort of come together between luck, repulsion, and attraction, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, there's somebody. Yeah.
Can you go into detail about your personal relationship with Darius? and then beyond that, I know it's the issue like all along after your career, when you go to Iranian studies stuff, and there's this kind of laughter about Iranian popular music, right? And that is, I mean, do we have sort of instilled in kind of cultural embarrassment, which is this low music, but it's also kind of close to our hearts and something like that. And essentially starting with the Darius story and then working on it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're putting me on the spot here, Professor Pilzer. Josh Pilzer, my colleague in ethnomusicology, everyone. My long-term roommate. So yeah, sure. The context, the question was talk about strong feelings of closeness and dislike for Iranian popular music. And so I'll tackle it from two angles. One is a story that I tell in the introduction where I went to a fancy party or an intellectual party and told somebody that I was going to write about Iranian popular music, and they said, "So, mikhai shit shenasi bekhuni," which that means you want to study shitology. They like made up a new word right then for me to completely dismiss what I was doing, right? And it was embarrassing. I didn't know what to say, but at the same time, I thought I better write that down because that tells me everything I need to know right there, that this is just garbage to this person, or they want to tell me that it is, whether or not they actually, of course, we had all been dancing to that same music 5 minutes before, right? So, you know, so there's that, which is part of the sort of love it, hate it, feel embarrassed by it, want to dance to it, don't want to be associated with it. But for Daryush, it's very different. Daryush is it's very serious. Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, he's, as you said, he's respected also in like.
Yeah, many people respect him deeply, and I respect him very much. Actually, through the process of getting to know him and going to his concerts, that was the major thing that really helped me understand when I saw a room full of people crying as he was singing and everybody singing along. And then I watched his music videos. I got into the sort of extreme sadness, right? Like literally crying tears of blood, as you know, that kind of style from your own research. So it's been a learning experience. What can I say? And I try to be transparent about that as much as possible to sort of let people see where I stand with stuff so that I don't, I don't know, just try to be honest about it as much as possible. Yeah.
I love that throughout the book, you're trying to retrieve all this like popular music and be like, it's not trashy, it's important. And then the end of the book is like, Gugush and Daryush still get the pedestal.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. But you know, in the review process, I was told to cut those chapters. Yeah.
You can't cut.
Yeah. So, you know, because they weren't political enough. I think that was the problem with them. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. The question is about when this music became so kitsch.
So I think the question is, is it kitsch to you, or do you think it's kitsch to them? And also, would you consider
the kitsch?
Well, I think would you consider like pre-revolutionary, like
less kitsch,
mardomi kind of like Susan or Agassi kitsch?
Yeah, it's a hard question, especially like looking back from the present moment.
Yeah.
It all gets kids, but I'm sure I just wonder, was the relation, like, you know, was the low culture, like this was created as low culture?
Yeah.
And it became increasingly low culture, and then somehow one of them, like, shout, that it became public, like the beloved pitch, but I wonder, was it because I grew up with this music, I also grew up with the traditional classical Iranian music, that was the height of it, right? And that kind of, I don't know, did the revolution, I'm wondering, did the revolution, the financial difficulties of, allowing this, or this need for this music to survive, did they all contribute to the widening of the gap between the high and the low? And could you also mention there's something like there's so much sexual implicitness in this kind of music that's not there in the past. But for me, the counterpoint to this is Persian classical music, but also maybe like good rock music, right? Like the non-Iranian one, right? Is there some, I don't know, I'm just wondering, there's so much there that is, we all know, but it's hard to pull apart and understand why is it that this music is seen as so.
Yeah. Do you want to respond, Hadi?
I just feel when you pointed out to Iranian classical music, I think if we juxtapose these two together, the Tehrangeles and Tehran, like during the 80s, when Tehrangeles became this powerful force, during the 80s in Iran, everything that was produced was Iranian classical music almost. So it's like, on the one hand, not on one hand, I don't think like in Tehrangeles nobody needed, or it wasn't economically viable even to try to produce something that would be even slightly similar to Iranian, look at those like classical, not kitsch kind of music, because there were musicians who tried to break into the scene, like what was her name? Like Shakila.
Oh yeah, Shakila. Yeah.
Or like every once in a while you see a Shakila trying to break into the scene and then they disappear. Because but then I think maybe it's to juxtapose that.
So you think it's related?
I think it's just that they had this one thing. They had this thing that it had no competition in Iran, and they really went for it. Because
why was this one thing so kitsch? Like why is that?
Well, let's also think about the era in Western popular music, because I think it's easy. We're a majority Iranian audience and we're a majority Iranian authors, right? And so we're thinking of this very much within an Iran bubble. But what about California? What about LA and Hollywood and all of that, right? And Jeff here played on Iranian albums in LA. One, right? Yes. So, and was a hired musician to come in and play, right? And so you have all of this availability in terms of, think about the background dancers for Andy's videos. They are all non-Iranian, all of them, right? And they're all models. They all are using pre-made sets. They're all doing all of this stuff. So that's another thing I think is the inspiration of Southern California maybe is also important. Yeah, why not? Anyway, yeah, good question. Yeah, go ahead.
Talking about this low time culture, do you think that this just specific to the music that was produced in LA, or even the same music being singing, even when it was in Iran before the revolution, I see it was this stigma to it, and people looked down on it, and no one who brought that cartoon out was very telling, disrespectful, embarrassing. You're 40, you're not supposed to dance. But I think that even before the revolution, people looked down upon this. They didn't want their children to be involved, especially their girls. And I remember a few years ago, I was researching and stumbled upon this video. I don't know if it was Vanguard, and they were watching variety show. And it's Feridun Farrokhzad trying to get Shohreh to sing and dance. And Shohreh is young.
It's Mikhak Noghay.
Yeah.
And Shohreh is this performer, this singer, Iranian young woman on this stage, want to perform, but she's trying to be very sanguine, not to be doing anything sexual. Or and I was looking at it and thinking, oh my God, what am I seeing here? it's the culture, mostly, not very much the revolution. I think that's what I'm trying to say. It's not what was as a result of production in LA.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying, that you can't blame it all on the revolution, for instance, right? It's already there.
Was an extraordinary,
Right.
low cost.
Right. Yeah, so that's a very interesting thing. I think one of the things that Manu Cherbi-Beyond would say is that he took a lot of credit for this, but I think some of that was due, was creating musiqi pop, which was different from mardomi, right? It was this, pop was this, like the Ebi video that we saw, it had a lot of resources poured into it, and he would put resources into that, and other producers would as well. Whereas the mardomi music, like the Susans, the Arasis, the, Vafai, whatever, are cheap to produce, and they would just do it like this. And what he said is, I made these singers in the musiqi pop realm so respectable that they could even go and perform for the Shah. Before that, we wouldn't have that. Of course, that's a little bit of historical memory. You're thinking of your research with the Moitrebs being in the Qajar court and everything. I mean, like, there were always musicians in the court, but his attitude was that me and my cohort made pre-revolutionary popular music such something that people could be somewhat proud of. They had their own music. Now you're saying, I think, something that wasn't not quite to the level that he was saying. He still had a stigma attached to it, such that you wouldn't want your child to be a part of it. And I think all of that has a lot to do with also why you see fewer women in particular in Iranian popular music in general, but in Los Angeles also. Even Los Angeles, where we're all free, right? Is like the stigma is greater also for it's already there, but it's greater for women to be a part of it too.
I think also the Mikhak Nore is a very good example how popular music was used before the revolution and then after the revolution. Before the revolution, it's a very interesting thing to look at. If you look at those programs, you would see that they wanted to teach also Iranian people like European modernity, like from how they are like dressed. And also, like Farrokhzad would ask about the relationship between boys and girls, and like he's forcing something upon it's very, very much forced. And then after the revolution, also one of these things they had the value of being in between, like political opposition also programs, no? So people would also, because they would look at this, they wanted to wait, and in between you would have like some kind of political opposition propaganda coming up, and then you would also listen to that. So yeah, so it's also for use. It's low culture, but at the same time it does very well its job, no?
Yeah.
So
I think we should go.
yeah, we're gonna just get two back-to-back questions, so I'll get both of you guys to ask them, and then afterwards we have refreshments. There's going to be music. You guys see this big empty dance floor. We're gonna,
It's open.
and there's going to be visuals also. So there's a bunch of stuff happening on this side after. So if I can get maybe 1, 2 to make your comment.
Thank you. It took me to places, and I want to ask about places as well. In terms of speaking about the concept of resuscitation and the whole idea of pretending to be someone else that you're not. Then part of that more Kazan might actually come from, for example, women, Iranian women of the era of the Tehrangeles wanted to be blonde, wanted to be someone else that they were not, and then men wanted to be someone else that they were. So it's like that whole idea that you don't belong to that space that you're pretending to be a part of. At the same time, when you talked about immediately in my mind, you talked about Jackman in LA. I didn't know that existed. My idea of Jackman and then in Iran was a whole another kind of a place that it just took me there. It was a place of safety. We would go there, and then there was music, there was conversation in a space with like 4 universities in that same intersection. So there was a lot of hustle and bustle and talk and conversation. And then as soon as Beethoven decided to go to Mir-Djalali, there was like madness, like WTF, like, why are you going to a place that not a lot of people have access to? No public transportation very well happening in that area, like there's no traffic there. And they also wanted to pretend that they were something else, that they were not. They were already something very meaningful there. So in that space of detention, I wonder how it magic carpets to different places and temporalities, especially, for example, now we're in the largest, live in the largest Iranian diaspora community, but it has no relevance to the Tehrangeles. So I wonder how these things travel in terms of authenticity, West ossification, detention, like a space that brings more that value to the conversation.
It's a very
Merci. This is the big question, but we said we would do back to back. So we're going to go. Yeah, we're going to do this one.
My question will be less complex, which it's going to be for Hannah. You used this term, whole landscape. I do not know the exact definition of it is, and I can, in my mind, interpret it in a variety of ways. I was wondering what you mean, how you use that concept.
I didn't get
Poor landscape.
poor landscape.
And
Yeah.
how you use that term in relation to your work.
Yeah, poor landscape is coming from this artist Robert Smithson, which he worked greatly also on this landscape of California. And if you look at, I mean, I know that Los Angeles is very photogenic. It's because of the light, which is perfect for a photographer. But also and the representation of Los Angeles, because every Hollywood movie, I mean, there is many references of how Los Angeles have been represented during the Hollywood and through cinema, through photography. So we have this perfect image of Los Angeles. But next time you go there, just look at the constructions. It's really poor in the sense that when you see the shops, I'm not talking about the extravagant or architect-made houses, which are very beautiful, but these main roads, when you have all the shops, the architecture is very simple and often ugly. But the representation of Los Angeles made it really fantastic. We have all these images of Los Angeles, and I really love it because of that, because I can't get past by those images. But sometimes when I really look at things, suddenly it's like a very nice thing, and you scratch it and you see all these things coming out. And yeah.
I don't know how to answer your question, Nassim June.
It's a very rich question.
It's a lot of questions to handle. Yeah, it's a lot of questions, but maybe we can say that Mobtazal travels just like his.
Previous question about why Awasi, we don't consider Awasi as cage, but for example, Sharon Chapter as cage. Awasi was Awasi. But someone like Leila Furhat wasn't Leila Furhat. She wanted to be someone else, but happened to be Leila Furhat.
It lacked some, there's some question of authenticity or something like that.
Same as Beethoven. Beethoven was already Beethoven. Why did it go through Beethoven?
But that's a good question. Why is something like it's also, I was when you were doing your talk, I was thinking of Leila Furhat and Gugush. They has the similar kind of trajectory in work, but one of them is Gugush and one of them is Leila Furhat. So, I don't know. I think it's also how they are. Maybe Gugush gets also. Many aspects why Gugush became Gugush, but also mostly because of the tragedy where she was kind of in exile in her homeland. So I don't know. So I think maybe it would be easier to answer like specifics, because there we can say many things. And
yeah. Thank you so much for everybody.